with you, Philippe. Actually, when I was introducing yourself on stage, I was just saying that we are about to discover together a brand new model. And that's true. Of course, you're Chief Development Officer for Bureau Veritas. But again, there's one big question here. Are the management and use of personal data just a question of technology, or is it more than that?
Marjorie, thank you for the question. Thank you for inviting me here. Just a few words for those who don't know Bureau Veritas. We are not, so to speak, a startup. The company was launched in 1828. But we are now an international company with 67,000 people worldwide. And I think what is important to understand is our core business is verification of conformity and certification. And the reason for this business from the beginning has been to facilitate the trading and the transactions. Facilitating the trading and the transactions by improving the level of trust between the parties. And we have done that through various industrial revolutions. And today I think we are facing a new one. I would say personally, and I'm sure that this experience has been shared by many of you in the room, we enter into some apps and we are being asked for some data, including the surname of our grandmother. And at some point you start wondering what this data is going to be used for, and you drop out.
Sure.
So the development of all these wonderful technologies will rely on the trust of the users and the consumers. And it's not going to be sufficient, and I think Cécile and Laurent mentioned it already, it's not going to be sufficient to demonstrate that you are proof against cybersecurity, that the technology is there. It's very much more a question of how the data will be used and managed. And this is definitely a question which is much broader than only putting in place the right technologies.
Absolutely. And well, when you're talking about management of those data, I'm thinking about a label or a certification. Of course, it's the core job of Bureau Veritas. But again, can we think about a label that would be based on trust, of course, but that would maybe certify trust in data management? When you were thinking about this brand new certification, you asserted your claim on different field sectors that you've been working on and trying to certificate some management of others' activity there. Can you just bring us some illustration about those fields, and so that we can understand why a certification when it comes to management of data is definitely now available?
Yes, I think in terms of example, we can just take a couple of them. The origin of the company is a classification society, which consists in delivering a certificate of class, which is the authorization for a ship to sail. So that's what we have been doing for almost 200 years and applied to many different topics. I think a more recent topic is the organic food. I think a lot of us are now conscious about the fact that we should probably eat better food. And a lot of stores are selling so-called organic food. But they claim that the food is organic, and in many cases we buy it because there is a label there which we trust, and we are convinced that this food is indeed being grown or processed according to some principles. I think we can also relate that to a concept which has evolved into something real, which is the corporate social responsibility.
Okay.
A few years back, I think the society has realized that corporation had a role to play in the society and should demonstrate it. And then we started to see corporate social responsibility services to actually prove and demonstrate that companies are doing what they are doing. And the value of having a third party, as I think Cécile started to hint about it, is the fact that the company accepts to expose itself, to demonstrate transparency, and to, by this way, improving the level of trust that is users, partners, consumers can have in its services and products.
So, for my understanding, there is a way you can definitely duplicate or replicate the certification process you did put in place on several sectors, and then duplicate it to data management. But when it comes to data, isn't that too rigid? A label, a certification, because of course it's a challenging environment, and it's changing every single day. I mean, the number of data is growing constantly. So how will you be able to process a label that would be adaptable and agile to this context?
The whole idea is definitely not to labelize or to certify the way things are actually done. It's more to confirm and guarantee that the company has put in place the processes, has put in place the management systems, has put in place the cultural changes to make sure that progressively, when they are going to release new services, new products, they will include all the principles that this company has set for itself into the development of those services and products. And we can also see a concept emerging, which is privacy by design. So that from the very beginning, when again a service or a product is being conceived, the idea of how data which is going to be part of this service, of this product, will actually be managed and used.
Which actually brings us back to an argument of Isabelle Falque-Pierrotin yesterday on this very stage, when she was mentioning that nowadays you will need actually a new person at the comics or at the CEO table. It's the data protection officer. Actually, definitely follows what you're trying to define with this new certification or label. How do you, both together, Cécile and you, Philippe, what would be the missions of such a data protection officer when it comes to a company? Yes, it's open.
At AXA, we have a data protection officer, of course,
okay.
at the group level, so for all our entities, and we have the same in all of our entities. Well, he has several roles. First of all, there is the roles of compliance, so he has to make sure that we comply to all the rules and regulations and legal context, and it's very different from one region to another. So we mentioned what the EU is doing, but in Asia, there are lots of changes, even in China, in data regulation, in the US. Second of all, it's not only about compliance, it's also about the strategy. So his role is to say, how do we include the data privacy into the data strategy? And third, the customer. He needs to include what do we explain, what do we say to the customer, how do we engage with him on this question. So I think this is a new type of role, because this person has to mix legal background, IT knowledge, customer knowledge, and he needs to be in contact with many players. From the external world, so stakeholder, and from the internal world. It could be even the head of corporate social responsibility.
Yeah, so it's really interesting here to see how many tasks will be assigned to that chief data protection officer. Indeed, thank you so much to the both of you. It was really interesting. Maybe just a quick question before we go, because amazingly we're still in advance. We still have some time here. When it comes to the different legislation on different continents, from your perspective, both of you, which one is the wisest? I mean, which one is more wise when it comes to protecting data and at the same time fostering innovation?
I think it's very difficult to answer like this, because for each of them there are different rules when it comes to data portability, data addition, and so on. So there is not one which is the best of class or so on. I think the EU is really well positioned. And I think 2018 is going to be a key milestone with the General Data Protection Regulation. What I would like to stress is, it's also a question for us as an international, multinational company. What do we do? Do we have one standard, because it's a brand, it's AXA, it's what we stand for? Or do we decide to adapt to different cultural patterns and social acceptance when it comes to data. And so far, we're really working on having a global way to deal with data privacy, because we think that if there is an issue with data privacy in Turkey or China, our French customer, for them it matters, you know. It's the image of your group. So for us, it's really a question of global strategy rather than compliance in every country.
Thank you so much to the both of you for the extra questions and for your perspective.